Due to the extremely graphic content found within this game, YouTube will most likely age restrict and demonetize this video. If you would like to help this video stay competitive in the YouTube algorithm and help my channel grow at the same time, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. Something as small as this can heavily influence this video's performance, so thanks for your help, and now onto the video. Hello everybody, I'm B4Brandos, and welcome to my breakdown of Quake 4. A game that's often considered to be the black sheep of the series, in part for doing away with the iconic arena shooter gameplay, but also for its heavier focus on story, which really didn't gel too well with longtime fans, especially since it was so heavily connected to the beloved second game. But before we go too far into this, let's just quickly establish what Quake is. Quake is a long-running FPS series with strong ties to the very origins of the genre. However, the games have never had as strong an identity as something like Doom or Wolfenstein. This is due to the series flip-flopping between being multiplayer-focused or story-focused. But in 2005, id Software released Quake 4, a game that acted as a direct sequel to Quake 2, and really worked to flesh out the world that had only been hinted at in the previous game. And what's so fascinating about the game is just by simply prodding the backstory of Quake 2's cannon fodder enemies reveals a fascinating and disturbing sci-fi world that we get to explore. But I know you might be confused. You might be thinking, why on earth are we starting with the fourth game? How am I meant to understand the story? And that's fair enough. So let me give you a little rundown of the story so far. In the world of Quake, around 2065, Earth is invaded by an alien race called the Strogg, a fully militarized species who attacks Earth for its resources. And when I say resources, I mean humans, because the Strogg are a completely biomechanical hive mind, using and fusing different species to create new troops, and for the less fortunate, used as literal fuel for these machinations. This means soldiers that were captured on the battlefield would often return as Strogg, stripped of their free will and mangled by augmentation. Or more than likely, they would just never be seen again. But on the war, the Strogg attacked Earth, destroying most of its major cities and harvesting millions of people. This led to the creation of the Global Defense Force, an organization made up of the world's combined militaries. The ensuing battle between the Strogg and GDF lasted years and actually plays out during the in-game events of enemy territory Quake Wars, which is the stupidest name ever. Just call it Quake Wars. Get rid of this bit, just that part right there. That's good. What is this? Eventually though, the GDF managed to force the Strogg off Earth, and using their own technology against them, mounted a counter-invasion against their homeworld named Stroggos. And this is where Quake 2 begins. The protagonist of the game, named Bitterman, is one of the only surviving members of the first assault, and through the game, he makes his way across Stroggos, eventually finding and killing the leader of the Stroggs, the Makron. This disables the planet's defenses, and the humans stage another larger invasion. This is where Quake 4 picks up. We play as a Marine named Matthew Kane, a guy who's become somewhat of a legend for being the only survivor of the Armstrong Space Station incident, which is an event that's constantly mentioned throughout the game, but we never actually learn anything about it.
So you're really him, huh? Can you say what happened to the rest of your squad on that space station?
No, fuck off.
All we do know for sure is that Kane is 102% badass with a 0% margin for error. But little does he know that his journey down to that alien planet won't just be any other mission. It'll be a nightmare come true. So that's the story all set up, but you still might be wondering, why am I making this video? Well, the truth is, Quake 4 is mad underrated. See, I've never been a big Quake guy since I was absolutely spoiled to death by Half-Life. Like, if I was gonna play a 90s shooter, I always wanted something that was on that level of presentation, which stuff like Quake 1, Quake 2, you play those games to slaughter untold masses of cyborgs, not soak in the story, you know? But I think that's what really stood out to me about Quake 4. I'd had this thing sitting in my library for literally years, but there was always just something in the back of my mind telling me to check it out, because somehow I just knew that this thing was unique. And upon finally playing it a few months ago, I can tell you, I was right. Quake 4's entire concept is really interesting. It takes the extremely bare-bones story of Quake 2 and makes it the inciting incident of this game. And by doing that, it takes all these little lore tidbits you could find in Quake 2 and fleshes them out into a full-blown story. And that story is dark. It's full of body horror and cosmic dread. The environments, the ambience, it all tells a backstory that makes you even more invested in the main one. To be clear, Quake 4 is not a horror game, but there are quite a few moments when it walks a fine line between being one and not. It's like exploring a serial killer's house, except the house is an entire alien planet and the serial killer is a race of war-crazed cyborgs who don't know what empathy is. So the key takeaway here is that this game's the bomb, it's disturbing as hell, and today you and I are going to be jumping in there and I'm going to be showing you exactly why that is. So the game starts with space. The remains of a destroyed warship drift by, and soon after, a whole fleet of starships appear. On board, hundreds of Marines prepare to be deployed, and there's a lot of great aliens vibes going on. On orbital entry though, our shuttle gets shot down by a missile, and waking up in the wreckage, we find ourselves on Stroggos. And at a first glance, it looks like any other Earth desert, but then you notice the massive metal structures in the background, as well as how the sky is seemingly grayed out by smog. It's a wasteland. But there's no time to get all thinky, because we got some Stroggs to shoot, hoorah! And shoot Stroggs we do, as through this level, we work with our fellow Marines to sabotage the Stroggs' air defenses. Here we're given the basics of gameplay, and it's nothing crazy, but I do like the gunplay. It feels weighty, kind of like Half-Life mixed with Call of Duty or something. The Half-Life vibe is the strongest here though, because your squad mates can actually help you out. Technicians can repair your armor, medics can heal you, and sometimes you'll run into a Marine that'll just hook you up with a new weapon or upgrade one you've already got. And this won't make total sense at the moment, but these guys who we'll find scattered throughout the levels really add something that's definitely needed narratively, because they're total bros. Most of the time you don't even need to interact with them to get them to heal you. They'll just grab you, heal you, and say something like,
"You're back in the war, Marine,"
and then send you on your way. It's like, hell yeah. In this game, we're gonna witness some horrific stuff, and I feel like these little touch base moments with other Marines keep the tone from drifting right into horror. Like, you'll see one of your boys get ripped apart, and then in the next room, there'll be a Marine going like, "God, I love shooting Stroggs." You know, it just like fucking pumps you up. Moving onwards though, we break into the Stroggs air defense facility, and while there's not a ton of stuff to talk about here, I will say that I love the look of Strogg buildings. Because going into this game, I knew there wasn't a lot of lore on the Strogg, so I saw Quake 4 as a first-hand experience to explore their world and see what I made of it. And overall, this facility is really interesting if you're looking at it from a lore perspective. Almost everything inside is made from very worn metal. The lights are extremely dim. There's cables and computers everywhere. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this place were abandoned. But since I do know better, there's got to be a reason this place is in such disrepair, right? Well, another detail you can see around here are these aged banners. Just rags at this point. These things have obviously been here for a very long time. And in my opinion, I think it points towards the possibility of a civilization that no longer cares about this sort of thing. But we'll explore that idea a little bit later. As upon completing our mission of destroying the anti-aircraft guns, the USS Hannibal shows up, which looks fucking awesome. Although, as we board, awesome is probably the word I should be using for the next level, because all we do is explore the ship itself. I mean, we're meant to be getting to a mission briefing, but I'll do that later. There's just so many awesome little details on the ship. Pretty much every NPC has something to say. We can also learn a little bit about the Strogg from looking in on the medical bay.
The transceiver located at the base of the skull shows almost all action was dictated by an external source. I believe for a short time after Stroggification, the subject was aware of his actions but was unable to control them. Chilling scenario, to say the least.
Yeah, so if you get Stroggified, at least for a little while afterwards, you're completely aware of what's going on. That fact is going to become slightly and incrementally more disturbing as we go on, trust me. But making our way to our briefing, we're told that we're going after the Strogg's Nexus, which is essentially the mind that controls the hive mind. And to do it, we need to escort an EMP into the Nexus and detonate it. Sounds easy, right? I hope nothing horrific happens on this mission. So heading out, we jump on a truck and get going, and after about a 10-minute turret section, we have to disembark. And this is where the mission officially starts going to shit, as we're blocked from reaching the Nexus by a laser fence. And entering the facility to try switch it off, throughout our exploration, we meet several special enemies that destroy our team. Enemies like the Grunt, who are just your average run and bludgeon type dudes, and the Gladiator, who is actually kind of terrifying. If you see one of these guys round the corner, you best run away. They've got this shoulder-mounted cannon which will absolutely decimate you, and he's got like 1,000,000 health. This is the enemy you pull out the hardware for, you know? Oh, and speaking of hardware, you're probably wondering about the weapons, because this is Quake. If you don't have cool weapons, you might as well just fucking cancel the game. But yeah, Quake is really a series that sticks to its guns, so to speak, as almost every weapon from Quake 2 is featured in Quake 4, just in a bit of a tweaked capacity. First up, you have the Blaster. It's an okay gun. It's your absolute default weapon. Strangely, this game doesn't have a melee at all, despite there being one in the multiplayer. But the pistol does make up for this by literally having infinite ammo. You can shoot this thing forever if you want. The only reason I'm not praising this weapon is because the others are so awesome. The machine gun is one of those other awesome weapons. As someone who loves to mag dump in games, this gun is beautiful, it's satisfying to use, it's weighty, and there's even a magazine upgrade you get a little later that makes it so the gun spits out a total of 80 bullets. Fuck yeah. The shotgun is a mixed bag for me. On one hand, the design is sick. It looks like some sort of Nerf gun. On the other hand, it is just way too slow. For the enemies you can actually get up close with in the game, you know, the kinds of guys you'd want to use this on, they're just way too fast for this thing. The pump is too slow. The reload is too slow. The only thing that stops me from not using this thing at all is the upgrade, which gives you 8 rounds in a mag. That's literally the only thing that makes this gun semi-viable. The Hyper Blaster, on the other hand, is viable in pretty much any situation. It's like the machine gun, but better. This thing just pumps out tons and tons of high damage energy blast. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this. I'm an easy man to please, all right? If a gun goes I'm into it. 10 out of 10. The grenade launcher is another favorite of mine. There's nothing special to it, but since a lot of the game takes place indoors and in some very tight corners, there's just these moments when the stars align, a bunch of enemies around the corner, and you can just feel the grenade launcher calling your name. You know, this thing isn't for every situation, but when you get to use it, it is so fun. I feel like I'm playing the demo man. The nail gun is just like the Hyper Blaster in the way that it's a better machine gun, but it's also because it burns through ammo quicker than I burn through my weekly paycheck. Yeah, that shit just goes. You pull the thing out and then 2 seconds later, you gotta put it away again. That sounds weird out of context. The rocket launcher is a really great weapon too, but I don't feel like I got to use it enough. You know, give me more rockets. I want more rockets. The railgun is great if you need to pull off some one-shots. Imagine the warp, but it's Quake. This thing blows enemies away. I love it. The lightning gun is awesome because it is literally the embodiment of the dark matter gun, or as I like to call it, black hole gun, is just the BFG from Doom. Like, I'm serious. In Quake 2, this gun was originally called the BFG 10K, which I'm not complaining, but it feels a little bit out of place. The combat pace of Quake 4 is much slower than Quake 2, so it feels a little bit weird to have this field clearing, super overpowered weapon in the game when it just doesn't really fit. It almost feels like it's been modded in or something. Anyway, back to the story. After most of our boys get absolutely destroyed, we finally make it back outside and have to commandeer a tank. And this section is really cool, because finally, you're not sitting on the back of a truck or following your Marine buddies around. You're just given a tank and told to get to the Nexus, which I really like. I feel at this point, you know enough about the Strogg to go, wait, I have to do this alone? But at this point, you're also sick of following Marines around, so you want to be free. It creates this tense atmosphere where you don't really know what's gonna happen. But yeah, this whole section is strangely reminiscent of water hazard from Half-Life 2. You're given a floaty feeling vehicle with a gun on it, and you have to zoom around some waterways fending off enemies. Overall, it's pretty fun. I'm especially impressed with the enemy type that's introduced here called the Hornet, because it's like this little hover ship, except when you shoot at it, the thing slightly twitches out of your sights. It really does look like a bug flying around. I don't think I've ever dealt with an FPS enemy that's this fluid with reading my attacks. It's awesome. Reaching the Nexus though, we fight two harvesters, which are these massive spider looking robots, which look fucking wicked. By the way, I love that the Strogg are portrayed as this emotionless war machine of a civilization, but come on, man. You can't tell me that at least one brain cell of the Strogg hive mind didn't design these things to look cool, okay? You can't design something this cool looking on accident. But getting inside, we meet up with the rest of our squad, and needing to locate the Nexus, we move deeper into the facility where we run into the reason I made this video. Now, up until this point, I was enjoying the game. It seemed quite straightforward though. There was no hook, I guess. I was thinking, gosh, we're halfway through the game, and this thing might just end up being mid. You know, it was like just an average sci-fi alien shooter. Oh boy, I was wrong. Because in my opinion, the first half of this game is only just okay to lull you into a false sense of security. Since as we head off, we step into a room and find what happens if the Strogg gets their hands on you. Missing all their limbs with a monitor implanted in their chest, this is just one of the possible fates you could experience if you were unlucky enough to get captured. And I think this moment transforms the Strogg from your average space bad guys into something truly horrific. We fought their foot soldiers before, but here, we learned that those guys were lucky. The Strogg are ruthlessly efficient. Why give a soldier a weapon when you can replace their arm with one? Why let a computer continue to live with arms and legs? That's who we're dealing with here. A race of aliens where empathy was never a part of the equation. Now, one of my favorite things about Quake 4 is that from this point on, to get their point across about how the Stroggs operate, the devs drop one of these tortured souls into every couple of rooms. And there are quite a few variations of human machines. So I've done my due diligence and rounded them up into a ranking, and we're gonna look at what is the best worst fate than death, and what is the worst fate than death. Yeah, and then at the end, I'll choose which fate I would rather live through. So our contestants are breathing tube guy, torso guy, computer guy, electrocuted guy, and wall guy. So the most desirable worse fate than death the Strogg can offer you is probably the torso guy, because on these screens, it seems like they're using the bodies to process Stroylant, and these bodies also have no head. So I think the Strogg are literally just using the bodies as pumps. It's kind of funny because the most visually disturbing Stroggification in the game is also the one where the human feels the least amount of discomfort. The next fate worse than death is a step up in suffering though, only because I'm convinced there is somewhat of a human psyche experiencing it, and that will be the pod guy. I'm mostly sure that these humans are used as just straight batteries, so usually they're just kept around in the more mundane parts of Strogg facilities. These guys are missing all their limbs and are hooked up to some sort of breathing device. The only reason they're not higher on the list is because although they blink, they don't really show any signs of distress or really being there at all. So while their situation is awful, I don't really know if there's too much suffering happening there. Third worst fate will be the computer guy. Not to say that the Strogg's specialty isn't usually mutilation, but they really go the extra step with this one. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but it does not look good or comfortable. The only upside about this predicament is that they don't look completely there, which is fair. If I were turned into a human computer, I might mentally check out a little bit too. Second worst fate is going to be the wall guy. This one is unique because you actually get to keep all your limbs, but it can also be twisted around to be one of the cruelest, since it seems that these guys are some of the least modified, which also includes their brains, as you can see them periodically try and lift themselves off the machine. So in this contraption, you're fully aware, fully in one piece, but are unable to pull yourself off this thing because you're fused to it. This one would 100% be number one if the next machine didn't exist. So finally, number one has definitely got to be the electrocuted victim. This machine is a combination of the worst things the Strogg will do to you. First, he doesn't have any limbs, which sucks, but also it seems like they're fully cognizant as they look around frantically between electric shocks. I actually believe that due to where they're found, these humans might be getting used as computer processors, with tons of data being forced through their brains during every shock. Definitely the most fucked up Stroggification, since it looks like it's depriving them of one of the Strogg's only mercies, which is them blanking your mind. Instead here, you're trapped in the hellish existence of being aware of your situation while being electrocuted every few seconds, and worse still, you definitely have time to ponder the idea that the only way you're getting out of this is by dying from old age or your brain getting fried, which, knowing the Strogg, will probably just get you turned into another one of their limbless machine victims. Wow, that was disturbing. And if you're wondering, no, you actually can't mercy kill any of these guys. Believe me, I tried. Now, for which one I would choose if I had to get Stroggified, it would definitely be Torso Guy. Just because, like, I don't think my brain's still gonna be around by the time my body gets here. But if I am still thinking and conscious, fuck that. I'd say my second pick would be Wall Guy. Because even if the situation sucks bad, there are still two big pluses here, okay? One, I get to keep all my limbs. Two, I get to keep my underwear. You know, as far as the Strogg go, that's big. But yeah, in the end, we locate the Nexus, and parking our EMP near it, we begin to relax because that shit was easy, and we're about to win the war. Suddenly, a harvester bursts in and destroys all of our EMPs. Strauss, who's this super whiny character, says he might have a plan though, and with us being the only one who's uninjured, we set off alone to meet him. And after following him for a bit, we finally get to a control center where Strauss asks us to go turn off the coolant pump. So going to do that, we're ambushed by two enemies called the Stream Protectors, which look really cool. Once again, Strogg are portrayed as emotionless. Efficiency over everything, right? But then you have these guys who show up looking like Combine elites on crack. They even have a paint job. And their kit is insane too. These guys have a machine gun, flamethrower, plasma launcher, and a rocket launcher that they will switch between during the fight. Overall though, they do turn out to be quite big pushovers, and killing them, we're once again interrupted when... the Makron 2 shows up. And if you're confused, since the Makron was killed in Quake 2, that's okay. Pretty much for a little history lesson, straight from the Quake 2 manual, the way politics work on Stroggos is that you have the Nexus on top, which controls the overall hive mind. Then you have the Makron. This is a Strogg which has proved itself mightier than the rest and is picked by the Nexus out of a group of warlords, which is also confusing because how can you have warlords if you're part of a hive mind? I don't think the lore really knows, but I do have a little bit of a theory. I think that the Nexus is always trying to enhance its soldiers. So I imagine when they're not conquering worlds, a lot of the Strogg are actually fighting each other. This is how the Nexus tests different technologies and augments. The successful Stroggs would become warlords and be given responsibility, and whoever proves themselves becomes the new Makron. That's what makes sense to me, but you know, I don't know. So pretty much this Makron was a warlord, and when the Quake 2 Makron got killed, this guy got promoted. But lore aside, I love this thing. He's huge. I love bosses in games that make you feel like that Willem Dafoe me. The design is top notch too though. He looks like a fucked up version of Mr. Waternoose from Monsters Inc. And on the body horror side, he's literally got a guy fused into his torso. It's sick. But what I love the most is that you can't really take him 100% seriously because the guy is just having too much fun. He is laughing constantly throughout the fight. How can I feel any sort of anger towards this guy when he's so full of happiness and whimsy? You know what? I take it back. The Fate Worse Than Death tier list is being amended because this dude is strapped to the Makron's body all day long, and I bet Makron 2 is just hooting and hollering at every mundane thing he does. Makron 2 goes to make his morning coffee and he's just being the dude fused to his chest, you just be in this constant state of like, what's so funny? Anyways, this is one of those fights where you're not meant to win, and halfway through, the Makron whips out the Half-Life 2 gravity gun and tosses us around. He then has one last big laugh in our face, and we're then transported into one of the most horrific game scenes ever made. We wake up on a table inside an absolute nightmare. So far in this game, we've heard what happens if you get taken by the Strogg. We've seen what happens. But this scene serves as the missing link, the moment that connects all the dots for the player, and we see just how brutal the Strogg really are. As our table moves along the halls, we can hear distant screams. Dried blood cakes the walls, and all too soon we arrive at our first station. Something really clever the devs do here is that they have a guy in front of you who gets Stroggified first, which means you can see what's about to happen before it happens. It's honestly horrifying. But the first station is a big needle. Oh. And the crazy thing is that in the lore, this isn't even part of the Stroggification. It's to pump the victim full of steroids and adrenaline just so they'll survive the procedure. The next station is a lot more gnarly though, as a saw blade cuts off our legs. To be honest, it's probably a good thing that I waited this long to play this game, because if I played this game back when I bought it, I would just be looking over my shoulder. I would not want my mom to see this. The station after that is about reassembly though, as we get fitted with body armor and new legs. And after that, we're given a neurosight, which is something that uplinks us to the Nexus and lets us understand Strogg. Finally, we reach the neurosight activator, which will turn us fully into a mind-controlled soldier. But just before that happens, our team storms in, saving us. And being freed, we are now 99.9% Strogg. Before we move on though, let's just talk about this scene for a sec, because holy shit, like I don't think I've played a game where a character gets this injured since Outlast, maybe? But I really appreciate how this game handles stuff like this. Quake 4 is not classified as a horror game, but the enemy faction in the game is quite horrific. So I love that while we can have this sci-fi action epic, when it's time to get dark, the game gets dark, and it never feels like tonal whiplash. And they really start to mix these two tones when you step out of the room and see your new appearance. At this point, it looks like our face has been stapled on, like we're more of a machine now, and the man is just a paint job laid over that. The good news though is that we now have Strogg superpowers. Thanks to our new robo legs, Kane can now jump higher, move faster, and we can even access these Stroylant dispensers around Stroggos to refill our health. It's a cool change of pace for the combat and a much needed upgrade considering the kind of stuff we're going to be facing. But with our medic calling us an evac in classic FPS game fashion, the fucking thing crashes and we're left to figure out our own way out. Our medic buddy then gets kidnapped by this Strogg doctor thing and we're back on our own, which is just brutal, dude. Not only has Kane been out in the field for a few hours now, but he's just endured a brutal surgery and just has to fucking deal with it. It's nuts. Can you imagine getting your legs cut off, getting new ones, and then having to go to work? But I absolutely adore this level from here on out. I think the game really puts on its big boy pants here and starts diving into what makes the Strogg scary. Like, the entire facility is grade A disturbing to explore. In the ambience, you can hear screams and wailing. There's also a lot more Stroggified humans lining the wall. One of the most disturbing things you can find here though is definitely the vivisected humans. Earlier in the game, you can overhear a Marine say this.
Strogg do some seriously weird shit to prisoners. They remove different organs just to see how long a human can last without them.
And yeah, this is what they were talking about. If you get captured by the Strogg, you either get turned into a soldier, a living computer, or if you're really unlucky, they might just do surgery on you while you're awake and see what your reaction is. It's really fucked, and this level does a great job at making you understand why the Strogg can't win this war. Because they don't care about us. They don't want humanity alive. They don't want to rule over us. They want a fuel source, and they do not care how much agony they need to put humanity through to get it. It's pretty crazy because this is a galactic war being fought not for ideology or power, but for survival. Because if the Strogg has their way, they'll torture all of humanity till they run out of people. Finally making it outside though, the arid landscape view of Stroggos is for once a breath of fresh air. Despite the worst case scenario happening to us, we're still here. We're receiving a communication calling for Marines to head to the waste facility for evac. We jump into our second vehicle section of the game. Except this time, we get a mech. I also love that they put a destroyed tank right next to it, just to make sure you understand they're like, we're not doing that again. But the mech is surprisingly great to control. The thing actually moves like a mech. It takes time to maneuver the thing around. It's not like the player just magically grew 10 feet tall. It actually has weight to it. Is it as fun as the mech from Fear 2? No, but it's still pretty good. Sadly, the section isn't crazy long though, and after beating another harvester, we make it to the waste processing facility, which is another banger level. The entire facility seemingly has this layer of grime covering every surface. Even the lights in this place look dirty. There's also a ton of these human pumps in this area, and I know I put this one as one of the least horrible fates in the game, but they're so disturbing to look at, especially the noises they make, because it sounds like they're constantly choking. And if these things are still sentient, holy shit. But the horror doesn't stop there. As we move further into the facility, we can see what looks like organs lining the walls, and they're pulsing. Moving forwards though, we enter the recomposition facility where we find this gladiator playing Dead by Daylight. But apart from that, there ain't shit happening in this level. We legit spend the whole thing trying to move some barrels so we can jump on them. The next level though is where shit gets crazy, because entering the purification center, the lighting is dim. There's more mutilated humans, and everything's got this sickly green tinge to it. In fact, the lighting of this level is actually what inspired the lighting of my set today. Further still, there's even more organs lining the walls now too, and every time we remotely even touch them, we can hear the cries of some sort of creature. And it's not long before we get a first-hand look at what's making all the racket. This is the Stroyant processor, a creature that is force-fed Stroyant to convert it into something that's ready to use. Now this might look like an epic boss fight, but it's actually really easy, since we need to run over to this panel and interact with it and press this other button, which force feeds the creature till it bursts. Holy shit! Yeah, I don't feel great about doing that. But moving on, we jump down the hole the creature made and end up in the next and probably the most horrifying level of the game, waste processing. As the level begins, we find ourselves in these kind of tunnels and coming across a barrel. This is the zombie, and despite its extremely generic name, the lore behind it is much more grotesque. The zombies are half Stroggified humans, people whose bodies couldn't take the augment, or just those who were outfitted with faulty tech. It's nightmarish to think that not only will you go through excruciating pain if you're captured by the Strogg, but if you can't take the augments, they'll dump you here to die. Imagine going about your whole life only to be kidnapped, ripped apart, and then dumped in a pit of body parts. It's brutal. And another disturbing thing is that we don't even know which of these zombies are fully Strogg. Some of them could be totally aware of what's happening, but are attacking you because they're either delirious or because you look like a Strogg. The whole level is just a nightmare, right down to the canals of blood. Really, this whole place is what the Strogg is about. Mechanical, efficient, brutal mutilation. Something that is doubled down on a bit later when we run into Lieutenant VOSS. Oh wait, I didn't mention who Lieutenant VOSS is. Lieutenant VOSS is a lieutenant in our team. And he's on the mission with us, and then he comes and saves us, and then he gets kidnapped, and then he gets Stroggified. There you go, now you know.
Kane, you have to get out of here. I don't know how much longer I can last. Go! Get out of here! I can't control it! Run!
And this is a great boss fight. Not because it does anything crazy. VOSS is like the most average boss ever. He just stomps towards you shooting. But I think the set piece does a ton of heavy lifting. We've run the gauntlet here in the last few levels. We have witnessed the most fucked up shit you can imagine. We've seen what the Strogg are capable of. And then they take all this and roll it into a boss fight. Because VOSS isn't totally Stroggified yet. So for the whole boss fight, he's pleading for you to escape. It's tragic, it's disturbing, and it only has this weight because of all the setup the game has done for this moment. It's not like, oh no, our boss is a cyborg now, no. We know exactly what VOSS has been through and how torturous it must be just to be him right now. But after we defeat VOSS, we meet up with some Marines and finally get evacuated. Someone get this man to a hospital, which is in fact exactly what happens. As back aboard the Hannibal, we're looked at by the ship's medics who tell us that they can't really do anything for us because we're more Strogg than human. And it even turns out that we lost our arms too during the Stroggification. It just wasn't shown. One of our squad mates then shows up to take us to a mission briefing though, and while walking through the ship, all of our fellow Marines are the biggest dicks to us.
It's a piece of shit Strogg doing on board the Hannibal.
Can you guys not see that I've recently experienced the most traumatic event of my life? Anyways, with the mission we just embarked on failing big time, Command decides that if we're gonna shut down the Nexus, we need to do it in person. And in order to get to the core, we need to shut down 3 towers. I'm also not sure if Kane is listening during this cutscene because he looks fried as fuck. But as the briefing comes to an end, the Hannibal comes under attack from the Strogg, and making our way to the drop pod, we execute Operation Last Hope. The next level then starts with us pulling a Helldivers as we zoom towards the towers. And what happens next is just so awesome. I love when games are like, put them on a roller coaster, why not? Working our way through the tower though, we see some more poor humans nailed to the walls, and while trying to reactivate the power, we're introduced to the game's newest and spookiest enemy. This is the Iron Maiden, who actually looks like she belongs on an Iron Maiden cover, but her gameplay is really interesting. Instead of just being in your face and trying to kill you, the Iron Maiden will phase in and out of reality, forcing you to guess where she's gone. But reactivating the power, disturbingly, we also reactivate the supply line for human batteries. And this section is really awesome. The ambience is filled with this ghostly droning, the lighting goes cold, and in pretty much every room you run into an Iron Maiden. It creates this really effective vibe. Like, we've seen the gory side of the Strogg, but this is the HQ. This is what it's all for. And all up, it's very alien. Fighting screaming cyborgs from your own kind as pods upon pods containing mutilated humans roll by. The simple, targeted brutality of it deepens how interesting the Strogg are. Because sure, we know they're attacking humanity to use them as fuel, but how did they get here? As a race, how did the Strogg normalize such cruelty? I feel like the more we explore Stroggos, the more questions we have about the Strogg. But continuing forwards, we meet up with one of our squad mates and enter an elevator which gives us an amazing view of Stroggos.
Shit, I think I can see my house from here.
Adding to this though is the really great ambience that kicks in once we're out of the elevator. And finding this window, we just get the money shot. This view combined with the audio, holy shit. I think this whole scene paints a very clear picture of who the Strogg are. Words aren't really needed, you can see it. Overlooking the landscape, we can see the sun peeking over the distant mountains. A reminder of Earth, a place that's beautiful and green. But this isn't Earth. This is Stroggos. And while that sun may have once risen over a vibrant world, these days it's nothing but a wasteland. If our journey through Stroggos has taught us anything, it's that the Strogg care for nothing but war. Every building is dedicated to the production of weapons, fuel, or soldiers. It's clear that this world is dead because of their endless industrialization. Over decades, maybe centuries, or even millennia, the Strogg have destroyed their own world simply to further themselves. But why? The Strogg spare no thought to their own comfort or quality of life. They don't even replace the banners bearing their own insignia. It seems like their only purpose is war, which is what makes them so interesting. That's why I'm going to quickly talk about some of the theories for the Strogg's origins. And the best part is these theories come directly from the characters in the game. See, back on the Hannibal, you could hear these Marines talk about what they think the Strogg are. And I think these are more the devs dropping clues than random throwaway lines.
I've also heard that the Strogg are super soldiers left over from some major war in another part of the galaxy.
So theory one from these Marines is that the Strogg are a remnant of an ancient galactic war. The idea is that the Strogg were some kind of weapon, a force that could fight, capture, and assimilate. An army that would only grow the more you fought. But what if in this galactic war, no one emerged the victor, and the warring aliens were all killed? What happens to your replicating force? Well, I imagine when the Strogg stopped receiving orders from their masters, they went off the last orders they received, which could have just been kill our enemies. But with the aliens' enemies being dead, the Strogg would forever search the universe for them, attacking and harvesting any civilization they came across just to stay operational and carry out their orders. So the Strogg could be an out-of-control superweapon that's lost its off switch, a virus that stretches across the stars in search of something they'll never find, a machine that's only purpose is to continue its mission. That would explain the condition of Stroggos, a planet that's been ravaged by a machine mind that's only focused on its mission. It truly is like the Strogg is some massive parasite that sucked the life out of Stroggos, and who knows how many other planets they've done this to. Although personally my favorite theory on the Strogg will have to be the second one, which is
Someone else told me the Strogg are the next step in human evolution. When you think about how much we rely on technology, maybe that's not too far from being right.
the Strogg are our future. And no, I don't mean they are literally future humans. I mean they're a race that are very similar to us. They're just a few thousand years ahead. And the evidence for this theory is actually a lot stronger, since in Quake 2, during the last level, we make our way through Palace City, which is the Strogg's main base. And the interesting thing here is that it seems that the city has been built layer by layer. Each level is a different look and age until you get down to the very depths where we can find a brick wall. Now you might be wondering, what's so special about this? Well, it's evidence that a long time ago, the Strogg were just like us. They built with brick and mortar, not metal and nanotech. As technology progressed on Stroggos, more and more Strogg would have gotten augmented. Think of our day and age, where we still don't have perfect robot arms and whatnot. Think of what will happen on the day when you can lose an arm and your replacement will not only be just as good as what you lost, but better. On that day, the floodgates for augmentations will open. Next, you'll hear about brain chips that will let you use the internet anywhere, or augment eyes that will let you take photos. If these ideas are perceivable to us now, imagine what happens on a world where all of that did happen, and then jump forward a few thousand years. It's not hard to see how the Strogg could have fallen. On Stroggos, at some point a hive mind would have been introduced, and before long, it would have been made mandatory to be a part of it. From there, the rest would be history. Strogg history. As in we don't know anything about it. Because the Strogg don't keep historical records. They don't clean their facilities. They don't maintain their banners. It's as if one day, everyone on Stroggos stopped caring about that stuff. Their more human elements vanished one day, replaced with cold cruelty and a machine focus on reproducing. So yeah, no matter which theory you like, it's clear that the Strogg don't care about anything but war, conquest, and destruction. Whatever brought them to this point, whatever their reason or circumstances, I don't really think they matter anymore. The Strogg couldn't stop even if they wanted to at this point, because they have nothing left. The Strogg are nothing without a war to fight. And that's something I find deeply fascinating about them. It's the reason why I spend so long staring out this window, because this view shows me a civilization that's lost its way, a race that slipped too far down a slope they shouldn't have, and now there's no going back. Whatever world this sun used to rise over, it's no longer the same one. All that's left is dust, desert, and decaying metal. Oh yeah, we were talking about the story. So after this bit, the game actually goes a little bit downhill, because when they say we have to switch off these 3 towers, they literally mean us, the player. The way it goes is that at each tower, we meet with one of our squad mates, we blast through a ton of enemies, and then switch the tower on. There is a voice line that states that only Kane can turn these on, but that kind of sucks. This section is very repetitive, and if I'm being honest, it feels like they put in these objectives to pad for time. And I wouldn't even mind if it was a situation where one team handled a tower each and we had to go switch on a second after one of the teams failed. That's fine, but 3 towers? Me? By myself? Come on, Quake 4, you were doing so well. But there is a light at the end of this tunnel that comes in the form of the Tower Guardian, which is this massive thing with a jetpack. And I gotta say, this game does scale really well. I think large enemies can always be a bit tricky in games because they've gotta feel powerful, but Quake pulls it off really well. Like, my favorite attack this thing does is where it just hovers towards you and tries to land on you. It's the most intimidating thing. Once we finish off the super mutant behemoth, we activate the final tower and take the teleporter to the Nexus. And during this level, there's nothing particularly interesting to talk about. I do like that we get to see more of the technical side of the Strogg though, since there's a pretty large amount of platforming that takes place in what looks to be a massive server farm. Although I will say, my favorite area of this level is near the end when we walk down a hallway and it is just littered with ammo. Now I know, video games do this all the time. You can always tell when a boss is coming up because ammo starts showing up left, right, and center. But this is ridiculous. Like, seriously, how did this happen? It looks like the merchant from Resident Evil 4 died here and dropped all of his items. So yeah, no, it's not important, because entering the next room, we're ambushed by my boy Makron 2, yeah! Also, I know I've already talked about this, but the Makron 2 is so fucking funny. Through this whole game, you're seeing the Strogg do unspeakable things to people. We've explored their world and culture. And in this video, we've even pondered the origins of this barbaric entity. And then you meet the head honcho himself, and he's just cartoonishly evil. I love it. It's so funny how he's not even annoyed that he has to fight us again. He just gets in the arena, starts blasting and screaming shit like, "Die, human," and "weakling." Also, not to mention all the laughing. Bro is having so much fun. It's almost cute. I just respect the unwavering dedication to being evil. But seriously, this fight really isn't that hard, because if you use the black hole gun, the dude's health just melts. And you're just standing there going, "Oh, is that it?" Then the room goes dim. Dozens of human batteries appear, juice the guy up, and then he ejects from his body and starts hovering around. Crazy thing is, he's still laughing. Why wasn't this guy the original Makron? He was born for the job. Now, I am hyping up this fight a lot, but thanks to Black Hole Gun, his second stage isn't much harder than the first. So finishing him off, he voids out of existence, and the true final boss of the game appears, the Nexus. This is the mind that truly controls the Strogg, and strangely, it seems to be attached to a real spine. Is this another creature pulled apart by the Strogg? Has it enslaved the Strogg? Doesn't really matter, since it technically is the Strogg, so it's gotta die. I will say though that this final fight is a lot less fun than the Makron fight, since you just have to work at destroying it while waves upon waves of enemies are thrown at you. It's a bit uninspired in my opinion, and there's a game where we fought giant mutant jetpack monsters, big cyborg spiders, bigger cyborg spiders. Quake 4 is really fantastic at rolling spectacle into boss fights, but for this last one, I guess they just ran out of creative juice or something. What happened? Your balls drop off? But finishing the Nexus off, the thing explodes in a very satisfying way. And Kane looks like he doesn't even know what's going on. A little later, we return to our ship where everyone's waiting to say good job, though it feels a bit bittersweet, because everybody's just like, oh hell yeah, Kane, you kicked their asses back to Kingdom Come. And Kane's just standing there with his stapled on face. Our commander then gets a phone call, and the game ends on a cliffhanger.
Kane, you have new orders.
Well, yeah, that was abrupt. There's still so many questions though, you know? Is the war over? What do the Strogg do now that they have no leader? There's a lot of unanswered threads. But I guess on the flip side, we invaded an alien world, shut down their infrastructure, and took out their leadership. I'm not sure how much more you can fit into a game set around a military campaign. Unfortunately though, this game's story never continued. After Quake 4, there was of course the prequel multiplayer game Quake Wars, and there was also an expansion planned for the game called Quake 4 Awakening. A few years ago, in fact, a ton of concept art dropped for it, which looks gnarly. I am showing you some of my favorite ones right now, and as you can see, they were really gonna dial up the body horror. It might have even been that in the story, after the Nexus is destroyed, the Strogg start putting themselves together wrong. Like they don't have the right instructions to make new soldiers, so they just pump out these creatures. Like, can you imagine the Stroggification this thing had to go through? At the end of the day though, this concept art is all we have to go off. We don't have story details or anything. All we really know is that it was a planned expansion and then it was cancelled, which sucks. So that's really all we've got. Quake 4, Quake 4's prequel, and then a cancelled DLC. But after that, nothing. If you want to talk about Stroggs these days, you have to boot up Quake Champions and get the character. That is Quake 4 down to the Q though, whether you like it or not. It's been about 20 years since this game came out, and I don't think a sequel's coming. So this product by itself is what we've got. And I, for one, I'm going to say it's enough. In my eyes, this game does what it sets out to do. It takes this concept of the Strogg and it expands their lore. It then plunges you into a world full of that lore and has you run and gun all through it. The game is this fascinating, satisfying mix of power fantasy and disturbing horror. You know, one minute you're dropping Stroggs like nothing else, and the next you're watching someone get fucking ripped apart. It's disgusting, it's grimy, it's fun. This game would be a classic if it weren't tied to, and frankly, hindered by the Quake brand. Sure, it's not all of this, but it's this horrifying, amazing science fiction action game, and I'm in love with it. So I'm gonna give this one a really well-earned 9 out of 10. Welcome to the club, Quake 4. In the end, I didn't have that much bad stuff to say about this game. I only wish the team that made it were given more opportunities to tell these kinds of stories. And when the problem with the content is that there isn't more content, I think you're in an okay spot quality-wise. But yeah, that's Quake 4, guys. I hope you really enjoyed watching. Tell me what you thought about it in the comments. Was this video your first exposure to Quake 4? Will you be having nightmares like me about it? Quake veterans, tell me what you think about Quake 4. Was it too much of a departure for you? Tell me your Strogg theories. Tell me anything. I love reading comments. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. I had a great time working on this video. Quake 4 really blindsided me. I didn't even plan this video. I was just bored one day. I booted up the game and I was just like, dude, this is crazy. You know, it was just fantastic. I did not know that Quake 4 was just this gem, you know, just sitting there waiting to be played, you know? I feel bad that it's just been sitting in my my Steam account for so long now. Here's another comment for me. Tell me if there's any more games like this, all right? Are there any underrated FPS games that I'm just not hearing about? Because this shit was awesome and I'd never really looked into it. Anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for this video. I'll see you in the next one, and remember, don't let the Strogg take you alive.